Gospel lesson for today is from John chapter 12, verses 24 to 29. Now Thomas, one of the 12, called the twin, was not with them when Jesus came. So the other disciples told him, "We have seen the Lord." But he said to them, "Unless I see in his hands the print of the nails, and place my finger in the mark of the nails, and place my hand in his side, I will not believe." 8 days later, his disciples were again in the house, and Thomas was with them. The doors were shut, but Jesus came and stood among them and said, "Peace be with you." Then he said to Thomas, "Put your finger here, and see my hands, and put out your hand, and place it in my side. Do not be faithless, but believing." Thomas answered him, "My Lord and my God." Jesus said to him, "Have you believed because you have seen me? Blessed are those who have not seen and yet believe." This is the gospel of our Lord Jesus Christ.
Thanks be to God.
Choices. We all make choices. Pretty much every day. Pretty much in all kinds of circumstances. We learned in the very opening of the scriptures in the book of Genesis that we're created in God's image. Male and female, we are created. And part of living into that image of God is the ability to make choices. Some of the choices are obviously more significant than others. And some of our decisions are better than others. But the most critical choices require asking critical questions, even doubting long-held assumptions. Such doubts are a normal part of growing and learning so that we might grow as a person. Choices will at times raise doubts, especially when we are dealing with significant life decisions. And doubts can be very healthy. Why then has the tradition so maligned Thomas, a relatively minor character within the Gospels, for asking questions and then getting that derogatory label that history has given him of being the doubter? Look carefully at the scriptures today. Thomas doesn't doubt Jesus. He is doubting the account of his fellow disciples who often got it wrong. His disciples who needed additional explanations about parables and teachings of Jesus. The disciples who saw something miraculous like the feeding of 5,000. They saw it with their own eyes, and then they didn't believe that Jesus could walk on water. One could wonder why Thomas would ever believe anything that they would say. His questioning is based on his experience of his fellow disciples. And he just wants to know for himself. After all of them had seen the risen Christ. And he's like, I just want to see for myself. But we can see something in the story of Thomas. He wants to see so that he can believe. But faith is not the same as belief. We often use them interchangeably, and there's a subtle difference there. But we can see this in the story of Thomas, this fine distinction. Belief is really an intellectual understanding that something is there. And some of these understandings are things we are pretty convinced of. But these are usually ideas or concepts that we gather through acquiring information and experience. And because we are always gathering and acquiring new information, our beliefs can change as we bring that new information in. Faith, however, we can look at it as more of an equation. It's belief times confidence in that belief times action. When we have faith in something, it means that we have gathered some information, we have confidence in its truth for us, and that it can mean something, and we are willing to act on it. It's deeper than that. Paul reflected something in his first letter to the Corinthians, in what is usually one of the most familiar chapters, the 13th chapter, when he says, "When I was a child, I spoke like a child, I thought like a child, I reasoned like a child. When I became an adult, I put an end to childish ways." What he was basically saying is, as I have gained and grown in my beliefs and my confidence, I am willing to act on that. And he's growing in faith. Isn't that what the Christian journey is about? While Thomas had trouble believing, and let's face it, this was a kind of a challenging thing to believe. Evidence in the gospel indicates that he had great faith in Jesus, even before the resurrection. In fact, we see a good deal of confidence and action in Thomas's belief in Jesus as the Messiah in the 11th chapter of John, where Jesus is headed to Judea, to the family of Lazarus, knowing that the Jewish leadership were seeking to kill him. And it is Thomas who leads the way with the other disciples and declares, "Let us go, so that we may die with him." Thomas's faith in the mission of Jesus can be seen in this confidence that he was ready and willing to act even without having all the questions answered. Now let's face it. Everyone has doubts about important matters in life. I'd suggest that a healthy faith actually invites persons to question and to doubt. Remember, God is bigger than our questions. God is more powerful than our doubts. God can handle our joys, our sorrows, even our anger. And God can handle our doubts. I was in a church group, years ago, early in my ministry, and my coworker made a statement that really created kind of a stir among the group, where he talked about being angry with God. And the specifics of his anger that he talked about at that moment was when, during his college years, his mother passed away. And he was angry, and there were people in the group going like, "Oh, angry with God? Aren't you afraid what God will do to you if you're angry?" And he answered so simply. He said, "It's okay. God can take it." Well, that became a transforming conversation for that group of adults to realize that God indeed can handle our questions, our doubts, even our anger. Read the Psalms. The Psalms are filled with the questions and the doubts and even the anger of the Jewish people. But they didn't lose their faith. They trusted that God would be there along the journey. That's why it's okay for us to have the questions. It's okay for us to doubt. Whatever questions or doubts that we might have, we can be confident in one thing. No doubt or no question will ever separate us from the love of God. God is still there. So when Francis states in his prayer, where there is doubt, let me sow faith, he is not suggesting that we have to stop doubting, but rather he's encouraging faith in the one who will sustain us, guide us, and lead us on the journey as we explore what those questions and what those doubts might be. Faith allows us the freedom to question without fear, to live in this liminal time when answers are not clear, we're not sure where we may be going, and to doubt what might seem to be simple or easy solutions. I always get a little nervous with some of the simplest solutions that people have. When I hear the simple answers to some of life's tragedies, there was a pastor who spent more time in funeral homes than sometimes would like. And I hear how people try to comfort somebody else. I hear when a relatively younger person passes away and somebody says, well, it must be God's will, or they have a plan, or they died suddenly now so they wouldn't have to suffer later on. I'm not very comforted by that. My favorite was the woman who lost her husband. He was 47 years old. And at the funeral home, she was standing there during the visiting hours, right next to the casket. Her mother was standing with her. And I think her mother thought she was being helpful, but a friend from way back when, like high school, college years, came, seen it in the paper, just wanted to offer condolences. And the mother, in trying to be comforting, said to both of them, well, it's okay. She's single now. I sometimes go with the theory, better to keep your mouth shut and be thought a fool than to open it and remove all doubt. You know, the thing is, these types of things don't help. They're too simplistic. Now, to be certain, with children, we sometimes have to make things either right, wrong, black, white, but that's where children are developmentally. As we grow, we can't stay there. We need to start looking at the gray areas in between. And by doing so, that is going to necessarily raise certain doubts about some of the more complex, challenging questions of life. We start realizing that the simple answers don't satisfy us. Anne Lamott, who's author of Traveling Mercies, wrote this: the opposite of faith is not doubt, but certainty. Certainty is missing the point entirely. Faith includes noticing the mess, the emptiness and discomfort, and letting it be there until some light returns. Some of the most challenging ethical issues that we deal with as adults are only issues because we are actually doubting the absoluteness of certain moral situations. Issues of war and peace, end-of-life issues, environmental concerns, global warming, border and immigration issues, among a few, are not simple. And they cause us to continually ask and even doubt our moral and ethical positions that we may have held for quite a while. But that doesn't mean that the foundations of our faith are shaken. In fact, it's then that we need to realize that in all that messiness, God will send light, and God will walk with us through that. One of the challenges we have in the church today is reaching and speaking to younger generations. And I've talked to a lot of younger folks who have doubts. And when they express these doubts in some faith communities, they're told that they are unfaithful, that they have to stop asking the questions, and they just give up and walk away. But when the questions and the doubt are met with confidence that God is there through it all, and yes, we don't have every answer, we cannot be certain about everything, but God is there, and we have faith that we are not alone. Them and others like these young people stay connected. Now, lest you think I'm going to suggest the next thing we need to do is to create situations that raise doubt. I don't think we need to raise doubt in the minds of believers. It's going to happen anyway. And what we might think people should doubt, others may be very clear about and have come to some peace in their minds about that. But if we are going to be the instruments of peace that God desires us to be, it is our responsibility as the community of faith to respond to the questions and doubts of one another with love, with support, with encouragement. We need to be willing to stand with each other in that gap. And that gap happens for all of us. In fact, some of the most faithful people have expressed great doubt. You probably recognize Mother Teresa of Calcutta. Well, listen to something that she wrote. Such deep longing for God and repulsed, empty, no faith, no love, no zeal. Saving souls holds no attraction. Heaven means nothing. Pray for me that I keep smiling at him in spite of everything. Where there is doubt, let us sow faith. We don't need certainty. We need the faith to know that God is still there. God's given us great minds, that gift of making choices. We just need to keep the faith that will see us through that. And this peace, this brings peace, and this can bring us to new places and new depths of the soul. Just having the sense of assurance that even in the turmoil of uncertainty and questioning, we are not judged, we are not shunned, but we are welcomed because, like God, who draws us even nearer to walk along with us on the journey, we draw one another closer. As I was getting ready for this sermon, I came across this statement. There is simply a point in life when reason fails to satisfy our awareness of what is clearly unreasonable and clearly real at the same time. Like love and self-sacrifice and trust and good. Data does not exist to explain these unexplainable things. Then, only the doubt that opens our hearts to what we cannot comprehend, only the doubt that makes us rapidly pursue the truth, only the doubt that moves us beyond complacency, only the doubt that corrects mythologies not worthy of faith, can lead us to the purer heir of spiritual truth. God has given us so many good gifts. The gifts of ourselves and the gifts of one another. Let us now share a portion of those gifts with God as we receive our morning offering.